Hello and welcome to this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us for this edition of the program, another appearance, State Representative Tony Cabral coming in. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure to be with you and talk about those things that we care so much about.
Lots of going on for you folks right now up on the State House. And I'm going to start with, as we have been starting the last few shows, with you and your colleagues here from the area. Obviously, COVID is still prevalent and still, in many ways, dominates the news cycle, fair or unfair. But how are things right now when you look at Beacon Hill and you look at your job and what you're doing? How is COVID now impacting, and where do we stand?
Well, we are slowly moving in the direction of so-called new normalcy. The State House itself, the building, is still closed to the general public. Most likely will open to the general public sometime in the early fall. That's what the discussion is right now. Because when that happens, lots of things will change. So we'll be able to do hearings in person rather than all in Zoom. We'll be able to interact with people and create those personal relationships, which are crucial and important to move legislation.
Which you talked about last time here, yeah.
Right. So, so that will be welcoming news. We'll have to wait and see also with this new surge of the Delta variant, if that's going to change that timeline or not. But that's right now what we are thinking of doing. We have passed a number of so-called emergency laws to but extend the period in which some of those are into effect, such as dining outside, for example, such as public bodies to be able to have their public meetings remotely or hybrid, so to speak, remotely and in person. We've extended some of those deadlines.
And that's in your committee, as a matter of fact, that issue.
Yeah, some of that is in my committee. And we have actually bills to make that permanent. Some of those items, especially around public meetings and public bodies, from city council to public meeting, to town meetings and so forth. So all of that. And I think we'll take a look at it sometime in the fall, early winter, about making some of those probably permanent laws rather than just temporary. Right now they're on until about March, April of next year, of 2022. So some of those things will change. Some of those things will become the new normal, if you will. Part of the debate right now, at least of the conversation, I should say, is should it be hybrid? Should it be a quorum has to be in person or not? So some of those nuances of things that are important, actually, for how a meeting runs and how the public has access to those meetings, those things are important. So we haven't made any final decisions on that, but I think that's the ongoing discussion eventually on that stuff.
I'm curious. I mean, you represent a city that the vaccination rate. When I had Damone Chaplin on a couple of weeks ago, talking about the rate of vaccinations in the city. I know it's probably discussed. I don't know what the legislature, in a sense, can do, but is there any, I guess, the thought process from you and your colleagues up there about vaccination rates? And obviously, I know the cities and the gateway cities are lower than suburbs.
Yes, and we are right now also on the list of the CDC for county as part of Bristol County, in terms of the new recommendations for masks, right? But in the city, in Bristol County as a whole, I mean, in terms of vaccination rates, it's much lower than other parts of the state. Now, there are folks there are legislators, if you will, not, I haven't done that, but there are other legislators that have submitted new legislation or late files to address some of those issues. Should it be mandated? Should it not be mandated? Be in terms of once COVID reaches a certain percentage, should masks become mandate rather than a recommendation? Or the vaccine, should it be depending on what kind of front line are you involved in? Are you in the healthcare area or nursing homes, assisted living, and certain professions of that nature? Should actually teachers, for example, and staff in schools, should they be mandated, or should it be still a recommendation, or at least persuade those folks to get vaccinated? We know that you still have folks who work in the front lines, who work in hospitals that are not completely vaccinated, some of them, right? Including in our own area. So that's, to me, that's sort of troubling. I think if you are on a daily contact basis with patients and folks who might require emergency assistance of any kind in terms of their health issues, that if you're not vaccinated, I think it's troublesome, I think, probably. Should we mandate that? I mean, I'd rather people understand the situation, understand how important it is, and make that decision on their own. I think that would be the best way to go about it. But at some point, we have to probably analyze that.
You had said, too, and I look back at the last show, you had said the last time, which I thought was curious, is a lot of the things that you're debating, you and your colleagues debating now, it's not just for this episode. It's for an episode that happens down the road that we haven't even seen yet. I mean, in a sense, like you were saying it last time, you're learning as a body and as a government about things that you never really expected, and now the things that you're doing now will be in place for the next time. Hopefully there isn't a next time, but something will be in place.
Right. No, and that's precisely what we're trying to do, and look at things that we can adjust or fix or change, so we are better prepared for eventually another pandemic that might come along. And hopefully it won't be anytime soon, but we know that sometimes these things can happen. And this one has been like 100 years in the making, if you will.
Seems like, yeah.
But there are things that we need to really take in consideration. I know that's not right now part of a deep debate or conversation yet, but the emergency powers that the governor has, for example. The law in Massachusetts, that's an old law that was passed.
And you had said last time that he needs some, he or she, that person needs some ability to make decisions quickly.
Yes. No, I agree with that. Yeah. But should it be the declaration and the period of the declaration, should it be just carte blanche, right?
Right. Yep.
Or should it have some limitations, and the governor comes back again and says, okay, because of X, Y, and Z, we're going to continue that state of emergency? Because besides him or her being able to make those decisions quickly, they really have a lot of power during that period, right? Mm-hmm. They can make decisions without filing legislation, through executive orders and so forth. And it's important to have that flexibility as well, but I think there are some parameters that probably we need to look at.
So it's not so much, quote, I want to say the ability to make those decisions, it's the length of time that those decisions should be, and at some point he or she might have to come before the body and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking, what have you.
No, I think you got to have parameters. I mean, and then have a period of time in which the governor can declare a state of emergency. Then that time has to expire, and he has to come back and give us the reasons why he needs that extension.
I was watching one of the network news programs, and they were talking about Massachusetts in general, that the state, the cities, in general, the state is doing better than many states when it comes to obviously vaccinations and schooling and things like that. The state has done pretty well, and it's probably a compliment to you and to city leaders and to state leaders just working to get things done.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of those things, and coordinating it properly being flexible and movable when you need to do in terms of tackling the issue before. In terms of the pandemic, it's important. Speed is important to take action
Right.
quickly, and I think we have done so. Not only the legislature, but obviously the governor with the emergency powers and local leaders as well. In terms of how do we change the system to make it better, I think we need to probably strengthen the local ties to the local Board of Health, the various. I mean, we've tried over the years trying to coordinate those things and try to make Board of Health departments, be city or town, more connected to the Department of Public Health, right? But also what's important is that they have the right amount of resources. So their budget needs to be one that is carefully done. I think in the past, in some communities, the budget for that particular department was not sufficient for them to handle the daily aspects of health at the local level, but especially on the pandemic time.
One of the things, obviously, that's going on right now, and I think there's still questions about what it can be used for, but the ARPA money that is coming into, I know cities are getting it, school departments are getting it, the states are getting it. I don't know what you can say about it, because I think there's still questions about what can be used, if you will, about it. But what are your hopes of that money?
Well, the first thing we did, and that's is to change how that money gets spent and appropriated, right? We should, the legislature has the power to appropriate, not the governor. And that's precisely goes back to that state of emergency question. We did receive money. The state received quite a bit of money during the 3 stimulus packages. And basically, most of those decisions were done by the governor, right? Now, the ARPA money will be different. We have stepped in. There's no longer a state of emergency. So the governor does not have all those powers. Even though he's tried, he's put a proposal together and submitted to the legislature, which we have not acted on. I think we first are doing a series of public hearings, trying to hear from the general public, from the membership, from the various reps and senators. They know their districts very well and their cities and towns, and then we'll make some decisions. I think some of it will be for investment in terms of infrastructure investments, in terms of long-term projects, and some short-term. I think you'll see some short-term. Not so much around programming. I think that's more for the state budget itself. So I think there are great opportunities here if it's done right, if the right mix of projects are part of those funds, the expenditure of those funds. There are great opportunities. In addition to that, each community has their own direct ARPA money.
Correct.
Right? In the case of the city of New Bedford, just for the city itself, not counting the school department,
Which is another
pot of money.
Right.
But the city is going to get around 65 million directly, and those decisions will be made locally. And then the counties, by the way, did receive some money as well. Bristol County, Bristol County received over $100 million. So they will have to disperse that money too, and I believe some of that will come back to the various cities and towns that are part of that county. So you have 3 pots of money, or
4 actually, when you think education.
When you think education, so you have 4 that you can plan and juggle around and see what's the best way forward to spend those funds. In terms of the school department, it's around $74 million, and these are one-time funds.
I was just going to say, these are for one-time
funds
events. So I mean, with your expertise with bonding and stuff, this isn't for that stuff. This is for one-shot deal.
Yes.
Are you going to, and I say you because you're here, but is this something that you're going to have to, in a sense, lobby? I don't want to say against your other colleagues, but I mean, are there things that in your district, and I think of the harbor or State Pier or something like that, that those one-shot deals that you're going to have to be lobbying against others to get monies for particular projects that you're interested in?
I don't think we have to lobby against others. I think there is plenty of resources as part of this package, I think, for us to make the case on those projects that are important. Obviously, New Bedford has a number of important things. Even if you just talk about the waterfront, for example, from the fishing industry and all the maritime activity that takes place in our waterfront versus the upcoming, offshore wind, we have lots of issues that we can apply some resources to make it to help us get to the place that we need to be in order to sustain the new industry of offshore wind, and also, of course, sustain the fishing industry as well. So I think I'm sure will be more projects and more ideas and thoughts than the money can reach or can be. But I think once we all come and come with some decisions at some point, I think I would like to see things spent on projects that are transformative, that brings the profile of the city and makes those of us who live, let's say in the case of New Bedford, live and have the ability to grow and for our families benefit and our kids and grandkids in the future. I think if the money is applied appropriately, or if the investments are done, I think it will be really, really exciting.
I want to talk about offshore wind in a second, because I know there's been a lot of news coming out. You've attended a few events in the area here, just announcements and stuff, which is great news for the city. I want to just tackle something here briefly. I know it's on the national stage, but I'm curious as to where we are in the state when it comes to evictions. You see a lot about that the moratorium's up, and people are now worried about being dismissed from their apartments or whatever. Where is it on the state level? Because I know the state has been more aggressive on some of those issues.
We have. Right now, the moratorium at the national level has been extended until October 3rd. The Biden administration, through the CDC and some regulations, extended that. We hope that actually Congress should have acted on it.
Yeah, well, and the president said he wanted Congress to act on it.
But they didn't. They couldn't reach an agreement. But I think that's an important issue, because that you have a lot of families that are going to need assistance, and so we don't.
Especially in this district. I mean, in this city,
a lot of families, but right now the state has been very aggressive. We have put a lot of resources towards helping folks stay in their homes. The RAFT program, for example, which you are familiar with that program. It's been around for quite some time. I've never seen the RAFT program with so much resources allocated or appropriated. Over $100 million for that program. That's pretty aggressive, I believe. The legislature. I think all of us were cognizant of the fact of the importance of the issue. So that program can actually help someone catch up with their arrears in terms of their rent, get them ready to move forward if they have a job, if they don't, whatever it might be the situation, but put them in a place that they're not going to be homeless, and hopefully they don't face evictions of any kind. That's part of what the issue is in terms. You need resources as well to do that, right?
Well, I think the state's been, I mean, from at least what I read, it seems the state has been, I guess, I want to say ahead of really the federal government when it comes to the issue. Because there seems to be resources there. People just have to get to the appropriate person to activate it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, and sometimes it's information. People don't have the information.
Right.
During the American Night Out yesterday in New Bedford, I came across a family that was participating on some of the events there. They were facing eviction this week, and didn't know what to do. Right. So I told them what they needed to do to begin the process of trying to make sure they stay in their apartment, and they just were not aware of what's there that they can assess. So I think also the state through PSAs or public service announcements, make a better job of reaching out to all the population in terms of what's available, what's there to help them. Some of these funds, yeah, we say we appropriated a lot of money for this program, but some of that money comes from the federal stimulus package as well that the state received. So, and it's there to help families and individuals in this case. So I would say that people should look. In New Bedford, a good place to start is with PACE. They run some of the RAFT program.
Right.
That's a good place to start.
Talk about offshore wind, because you've been busy going to the waterfront. It seems there's been a lot of press conferences. I know, city, state, federal. It's good news for the city, and it's good news for the waterfront.
I think it's very good news for the city and for the waterfront. I think offshore wind is really sort of will place us in. If we do it right, I think we'll place the city and the region in a place that will see tremendous growth, job growth, investments, and we need the investments in the city. We need more commercial and industrial activity in order to also contribute to our property tax base. That will help the residents who live in the city at this point. And so I think that's one industry that I think we can be, and we gotta do everything we can, both the state and the city, to be at that place and take advantage. And when I say take advantage, in a good way, obviously in a positive way.
A lot of partnerships too now. I mean, you've got Bristol Community College. We've got schools involved. We've got different businesses involved that will benefit from the offshore wind. And it seems this is one thing. Offshore wind seems to be one issue that a lot of people are working obviously toward, but could benefit from. Yes,
absolutely. I think BCC, for example, BCC is in the process of establishing the training institute. And I think they will be able to do that now because there will be resources again through ARP, some of them ARPA resources, federal money available to help them establish the whole. It will be right on the waterfront as well in New Bedford. And that will be not only training folks for us, but training folks for the world in that sense. I mean, it's going to be open besides folks from New Bedford or Massachusetts. It seems to be interest already, even from Europe, to send folks here to be trained at that facility. So that's good. I mean, that's positive. That brings additional dollars into the city, into the state from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. This is an industry that is in Europe is really a full-blown industry. This will be our first, I call VW, but I don't want people to confuse it with a car. Vineyard Wind, right? They'll be the first to start installing the turbines. But you have Mayflower, who that also has received a contract from the state with the utilities. They have to go still through the federal permitting, and then it will be the state permitting. But that's a project that is even bigger, right?
And it seems to be going in the right direction now.
Yes. I think the change of federal administrations was also key, believe it or not, for this industry, because the previous administration had sort of put all these issues in the back burner. They were not interested in offshore wind per se, so they were really slowing down the process. This new administration at the federal level, obviously the Biden administration, has a completely different. The policies around offshore wind, the renewables, is completely different, and that will benefit from that as well here in New Bedford and in Massachusetts. Eventually, we're going to have probably not only Vineyard Wind, but Mayflower. Hopefully, Ørsted will have a project too, and Equinox, which is another company. All of these are technically European companies, believe it or not.
Right.
And that's great that they are finally investing in the new world, right?
I wanted to ask you. We've got a few minutes left, but I asked this question the other day to Damone, actually, in the health department. I mean, before this pandemic and everything hit, I mean, you had your priorities for issues that were were passionate about, you wanted to work on. Has the pandemic affected issues that are important, not just to you, but to others to get done, or have they taken a back seat? And I guess, where do you stand? I mean, you've got a lot of other priorities that you want to get accomplished.
Yeah, but a lot of the priorities, I think, are moving forward.
Are
For
they?
example,
Okay.
One of my priorities is offshore wind.
Yep.
I filed legislation on this issue to allow bigger procurement processes, which is what's happening now in the state. That language was adopted on the last reform that we did on renewables. When we first established the law in Massachusetts, it was a combination of myself and Representative Haddad that had filed legislation and tried to work this through. So that's moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say moving forward, because also the federal administration changed, and that's
Right.
important. The rail to New Bedford, right? That's on track, if I may use the term. So that's something that I've been working on and advocating for years.
Is it something? I mean, people are still skeptical.
No, it's
when
coming.
it comes to rail.
It's coming. I'm not skeptical anymore.
Okay.
I believe it's coming, and it's going to come, and I think we'll have a transformative impact as well in our economy. Some folks are concerned that it might displace some people, some families. I think that's something that we need to work with and work on. Make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure that everybody benefits from the extra activity and the extra investment that might take place in our region. I think we want everybody to sort of participate in that and benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we have to be on the lookout, something we have to be cognizant about, and make sure that doesn't happen. We have the fishing industry in terms of fishing research has been a priority of mine. I was able to secure again $450,000, almost $500,000 for SMAST to continue that fisheries research on the various species, just like they did with, just to make a quick comparison, they do the sort of studies and surveys that they did with scallops, and that changed the industry because NOAA needed to be changed on that issue, and we might have to do the same in terms of groundfish, right? That's 8 years that I've been working on. So you do 8 times $450,000. It goes into the millions that I've been working on, and making sure that at some point we have good results. I think they do right now. It's in a good place. They already have some good ways of looking at this issue and researching.
It's interesting. I saw the article in the paper the other day about fishing in particular, about these other species that were, quote, garbage fish, but now they're being sold, and
Right.
fishermen aren't, in a sense, wasting things. It's like some of these fish that taste pretty good, and people can eat them.
That's right.
And they haven't been, and years ago they weren't. They were just a waste fish, I guess.
They were at one time, and one of those is monkfish, for
Yep.
example, right?
Yep.
And there's another one called dogfish.
Dogfish,
right?
yep.
Just the name, people get a little skeptical.
Right, yep.
But they are great species. I mean, they are very tasteful, and now it's really, there is a market for those types of species, not only here, but also overseas.
Yeah,
Like monkfish and dogfish in some parts of even in Europe and Asia, it's big. It's big. So we have a market, not only a domestic market now for some of those species, but we have an international market.
and that's where the research comes in.
Yep.
That's where that money, in a sense, goes to, is to develop those other markets, if you will.
Those other markets, the research also is about making sure we know exactly or somewhat of an accurate count in terms of the
Yep.
various species, be cod, be haddock, be monkfish. So we understand the migration of those because of the waters are warming up around our area. So it's important to understand all of that and know exactly what's happening out there, and no place better than right
in our
here,
backyard.
SMAST, right?
Yeah.
But they need the resources, so that's what I've been trying to do. I mean, education has been one of my priorities and
Yep.
continues to be. We actually doing well in education in terms of funding. The city is going to get this present school year coming up $173 million.
And that was the
0.7.
That's the legislation that passed a couple of years
Yeah,
ago.
the Student
Reform
Opportunity Act,
Yep.
and that's like almost $8 million more than the previous fiscal year, than 2021. And there's more to come, I think. And cities like New Bedford will benefit a great deal from the Student Opportunity Act that we passed. It's a 7-year investment.
Yep.
So this is only actually technically the first year.
Right, because it was delayed the year.
It was delayed a year
Yep.
because of COVID. So now I think we are back on the 7-year trajectory, and I think that's going to be also potentially transformative if we use those resources appropriately.
We are out of time. Lots going on, obviously, just
Yep.
besides COVID, which is good to touch on, because I think a lot of times some of the stuff gets put to the back burner. And again, I mean, obviously the pandemic does dominate, but there's still other things going on. So
There are less, and there are more to come. I think we have to stay focused. Obviously, the pandemic is number one priority. Make sure that we move through this process and get to the other end safely and healthy, and everybody gets vaccinated. I hope, and without mandates. And then we can then start focusing on all those other important things that we need to work on.
good seeing you. At this rate, we'll see you at the end of the year too, which is good too. We can wrap up the
That's
calendar
right.
year. So
That's good. Well, thank you very much again for this opportunity. We'll see you by the end of the year. Right?
There you go.
Before the next year. Right?
exactly. That's going to do it for this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. That's Representative Tony Cabral. I'm Jim Marshall. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.